We've obviously got some drinks next door and a carving station, I believe. Last but not least for today, I'd like to introduce Wayne Simmons. Wayne is author, founder, serial entrepreneur, and industry legend, I would argue, over his career. Certainly in the CX space, and obviously a lot of the work that he's done to help organizations reinvent their approach to customer experience, which is obviously fundamental in the HCP and patient marketing world these days. Wayne, let me give you a little bit of his background as well. He's obviously led positions with Pfizer, Bayer. He's actually just not too long ago authored a book. Some of you may be familiar with this, the Customer Excellence Enterprise, and the list of his accomplishments goes on and on. So I'll leave things there, and so we don't cut into too much more time. But Wayne's going to be joining us to speaking on winning the moment, losing the journey. And Wayne's kind of random fun fact is he was born in neither a country or a state. Or you were not born in a country or a state, I should say. So I'll let him answer that for you. Please join me in welcoming Wayne as our final speaker this afternoon.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. All right, first of all, I want to connect everything you just said with my position speaking. So don't believe any of it. Is there a term for like opposite of keynote? What is that? We should coin a term today. But thank you all. I mean, Simon, thank you for the opportunity to speak and to share. And I love talking about customer experience. And now, 5 years into my journey in pharma, I love talking about customer experience in pharma. I've kind of gone through a journey of being naive and excited very early on in my pharma journey, coming from the outside of the industry as a CX practitioner, and a little bit of despondency, sort of in the middle. And then now, later on in my tenure, re-energized around this idea of experience as a value driver. So as Simon mentioned, I just left Pfizer in March and Bayer prior to that. So I really wanted to go into pharma because I was told it was the last frontier of CX. And indeed, it has been proven to be that way at all. Very nascent idea 5 years ago. And what I've learned is that customer experience as an idea in pharma looks very, very different than it does outside. And I came through that process of, again, being naive, trying to import models from outside financial services and retail and hospitality, and it just didn't stick in pharma. We did stuff, but it didn't stick. But after being in the industry for a while and actually engaging with colleagues in the commercial space, we've created a model that we think works. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. So today is going to be a little bit about my story, journey, a case study. So trying to ground this in the stuff that I've done that may work, hopefully may find useful in your environment. It's called Winning the Moment, Losing the Journey. Very, very tied to a lot of the things we talked about earlier today, or the topics that were discussed already today. Journeys, customer centricity, AI, of course. No one's talking about omnichannel anymore. So when I first started in pharma, omnichannel was everywhere. That was it. You don't hear it anymore, which is good. Progress is being made. But we'll go through a lot of different sort of components, and I hopefully will leave you with something you could take back to your pharma campus tomorrow and implement, something that's valuable for you. So let's get rolling. So I love a good quote, and I love an good old guy with a quote. And so as I've gotten into pharma as a outsider, and still very much an outsider, I realized and recognized that my value is not in my knowledge of pharma. I'm never going to be an expert. I've never carried the bag, never been out there in the field, except for some field rides. But I'm not a pharma insider, so I'm an outsider. And what I can bring to the party is a new set of eyes, a new lens on what possibilities could be in pharma. So this quote by Marcel Proust really kind of speaks to that. Not looking for new lands, new eyes. So that's the angle that I'm coming from in terms of walking through my talk today. couple of things that I've kind of landed on. I call them perpetual truths for me. What have I concluded? What have I seen? What am I about in pharma? What are my convictions and beliefs over these 5 years? First, a couple of things I've seen, what I call the stall. So customer experience is kind of stalled out as the first generation of it in pharma, called the stall, right? Trying to make net promoter score, customer satisfaction scores. I mean, that stuff doesn't really move the needle in pharma. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but it's not moving the needle, not changing behavior. Again, my conclusions, my point of view, my journey. Next, the game. So this is really something that was spoken about a lot today. Experiential commerce is now the new game. So experience is a fundamental value driver in the equation. You cannot include or forget to include experience as part of your proposition. It's fundamentally a part of it. And particularly as you get into more rare disease and oncology, journeys, experiences are fundamentally important to those spaces. So experiential commerce is kind of what is driving there. So the game is really matters. Next, the standard. Again, discussed quite a bit today, this idea of customer grade or consumer grade experiences. Our HCPs and our patients don't change their point of view or attitude when they walk into a healthcare environment. They expect Amazon and Netflix type experiences. We've been seeing it for the last 5 years. It seemed kind of trivial before. Now it's real. It's somewhat non-negotiable. That is a standard we're being held by, whether we like it or not. And finally, the move. What's the move here? And so what I would say is customer experience used to be a standalone discipline, like the CX silo, the marketing silo, the sales silo. And what I think has happened, and what I think the move is to incorporate it into the fabric alongside brand and product. So that's really the move. How do you get experience into that brand and product proposition? So that's the lens that I'll be coming from for the rest of this talk. So I've learned this term as well, bluff. I see it all over pharma. Had no idea what it meant. Now I know what it means. Bottom line up front. What are we talking about? So pharma doesn't have a demand problem. Pharma has a systemic value realization problem. And I'll get into that quite a bit. And it's a provocative statement, but I'll try and prove it with real numbers and a real case. So, so keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. We'll get into value realization as a growth driver. What I mean by this is the omnichannel, AI-powered commercial system is built, it's optimized, super optimized to generate intent. That's what we do, right? Yes, no, yeah, kinda. It's built for that purpose, right? And then when those activities, those journeys run up against our habit of building silos, it starts to fracture. And we've discussed that quite a bit today. Friction in the value chain, friction in the journey for patients, for HCPs, and as I've learned, for colleagues as well. And it's all tied together. So things start breaking down when you look at things as just looking at the intent piece of the equation. And then finally, as I mentioned, it really gets into impeding patient impact and commercial impact. So you're not, this realization idea, you're not going to be able to make the impact you want to make clinically or commercially. And then again, you're impacting your colleagues as well. So this is the bottom line up front. We'll get to the details of it, and hopefully you'll see what I mean and maybe agree or disagree. So let's get rolling. All right, new lens. So what I'm going to talk about to start off with is this idea, 3 symptoms, 1 outcome. And it's this idea of commercial drag, a drag on the system, right? What's dragging down the system? So we live in and exist in barrier-heavy journeys. So HCPs, patients, care teams, families, we live in very, very barrier-heavy journeys that don't really exist in other industries in terms of scale and scope. Airlines, kinda. Airlines are notorious for bad experiences, but that happens when they get off, when there's variation in their operations. When it's normal, things are normal. This is not great, but variations cause these very heavy environments. For us, it's sort of normalized. So barrier-heavy journeys. One, intent breaks post-script. So a lot of what we talk about in commercial, and I worked in marketing organizations as a CX implant, and we talk a lot about driving the intent, driving the funnel, driving how we get HCPs to prescribe our medicines and our therapies. That's where the focus was, right? But what happens afterwards becomes this sort of mysterious black hole. Who owns it? Who's talking about it? Are we having the same amount of rigor and conversation and intensity and data focused on the post-script world? So the idea is, once you get that script, game over, we won, on to the next. So again, creating commercial drag. And then the misaligned definition of success, right? We're trying to measure uplift in scripts. That's what we do. We're commercial people. We're paid to do that, right? Patients and HCPs obviously are not doing that, not using those metrics. They're using a thing called progression. How are we progressing through a journey to get on therapy, stay on therapy, to realize that clinical outcomes we're shooting for? So NRX, TRX, progression is a fundamentally different set of metrics and success criteria. So this is creating commercial drag. Now, this is not happening by accident. This is happening, unfortunately, by design, because it's too prevalent, right? This is the pattern. This is what we've designed into our systems. We've designed administrative burden, and I'm not saying us as pharma, as the industry, healthcare industry, the super expensive, growing in costs, complexity, healthcare industry. As access drops, administrative burden, handoffs across the board that are opaque, you name it, workflow disconnects. It just becomes a very, very obscure, opaque world. Not transparent the way it is on the front end, on the intent world. We know clicks, we know what's happening through that funnel. We know where HCPs are on their journeys. We're very focused on it. But on the back end of it, it's like, oh yes, access problems. Oh, it's prior authorization problems. Those sort of normalized comments are impacting the day-to-day lives of patients and HCPs. And again, colleagues, as we'll get into. Our reps are out there feeling the brunt of this. It's like having your customer service organization out there talking to customers. It's kind of what it feels like for them, because I've asked them. But at the end of the day, this variability, these journeys are burdensome for many, many people, and again, impeding both clinical impact and commercial impact. I think two things are dual mandate that we want to be able to inflect positively. All right. So what the net result of this is, intent doesn't necessarily equal impact. So all the work we're doing, all the investment we're making, all the cool tech stacks you have, and the AI you're laying over it, drives intent, but it's not necessarily showing up with impact, right? We just discussed that. So no clinical outcomes that are certain, and commercial outcomes. And then also the internal tax on the bottom, so impacting our reps. And I'm very, very passionate about this because they are the front line. And even in this sort of high-tech world of AI and all the things we're discussing, the field rep, that human in the loop, is still extremely important. At least it was for the organizations that I worked for. So this is really the consequence of the journeys that we've constructed and the system that we designed to be intent-driven, focused on intent, not so much on realization on the back end. I'm not saying we're not doing it, it's just not quite as organized, it's not quite as sequenced, it's not quite as orchestrated as it is on the front end. All right, so what's the shift? What do we do about this? How do we make a shift? Again, I'm gonna talk about this conceptually and then talk about a real example of how it was done. And it's going from moments to journeys. Individual moments, right? We talked about many of these things today. Paid media, rep-triggered emails. This is our game. This is our playbook. This is our language, our love language. This is what we do. And we measure ourselves in these different areas almost discreetly, independently of each other. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, I see a few reluctant nods. But yeah, we do this. Everyone's trying to execute their part of the pie. They're trying to execute the best of their ability, and they're often being successful, right? So you're winning those individual moments. Every one of these different steps and stages, there's many of them, they have their own metrics, their own language, their own resources, and they don't necessarily talk because we have a habit of silos. We love silos in pharma. We love them. So, winning the moment, all good. But losing the journey. And what that means is, as I discussed earlier, on the front end, we're doing a great job. We have rigor, we have discipline, we have executive attention, we have resources. I would argue that, again, from my perspective, my point of view, my experience, that the vast majority of the AI investment was going to that. Fortifying it, making it faster, making it better, targeting better, but making this front-end piece work better. So actually doubling down on the investments and the focus of this front-end piece, this intent-driving piece. But what happens after the script's written? We don't know, right? It's out of our hands. It gets transmitted, right? Something like this. We all have different journeys, interpretations of journeys. It's a fairly generic one. But a lot of stuff happens after the script's written, right? But it's fragmented. Ownership isn't clear. It's not like marketing sales, in the front end. We know where demarcation lines are. Is there friction there? Sure, but we know. On this sort of middle piece of it, there's a lot of fragmentation that happens. And it shows up as, oh yeah, that's prior authorization problems. That's an access problem. That's a patient support problem, So we're talking about it, but are we doing anything about it? Is the question. Same thing on the back end here. Adherence, diffuse accountability. Who's responsible for keeping a patient on therapy? All that work and investment you've done to get them on therapy. Think about it. We're spending billions of dollars to get them on therapy. But who's responsible for keeping them on therapy? Both from a clinical standpoint and a commercial standpoint. I don't know. Who knows? Again, it's being addressed, but not with the same rigor and focus as the front end. So these are the three areas that, in my recent past life, we've broken down to three journeys. Not the individual moments, they're critically important, but the individual journey, the three key journeys. Path to prescribe, path to fulfill, path to adhere. Not rocket science. It's an organizing construct for these individual journeys. And the question becomes, from a resource standpoint, where are we spending our time, energy, and money? Just simply on these three areas. Where is it? Is it 100% on the far left? So it's a good construct to organize thinking and allocate resources. And I'll show you how it matters. Because as we go through our system, we can confirm, or I can confirm, in my point of view, again, you may disagree, that our system was built for these moments. Delivering the detail, it's training the field force to deliver great, details, remote details. Looking at running the campaign. We're marketers in here, running campaigns. We love running campaigns. We talked about many, many ways of optimizing that today. That's what we like to do, right? Nothing wrong with it. Tracking NRX, TRX, reach and frequency, my favorite term in the world. Let's do more of it. And that's where AI is coming in. Let's do more reach, more frequency. Let's hit them harder, let's hit them faster, let's hit them more, right? But the idea is, the move is to switch over to governing journeys, governing these path to prescribe, path to fulfill, path to adhere. And these three journeys are fundamentally different for different indications, different brands, different therapeutic areas. There's a proliferation of them because there's subtle nuances depending on the drug or the environment or TA. But the three high-level constructs pretty much hold. So we want to shift from these individual moments and winning those to going to governing journeys and winning the journey. That's the game. So I'm going to jump into a quick case study about how we did this. I won't say which company, because I don't want to violate any of their proprietary constraints that I'm under. And it's anonymized in terms of numbers, that sort of thing, but it's going to give you a feel for how this comes to life in the real world. All right? Everybody you still here? You know, it's the last, good? All right, thumbs up. All right, so let's hit it. So this is a therapeutic area that had 6 to 9 roles interacting with HCPs. Different roles, different functions across the path to prescribe, path to fulfill, path to adhere, right? Tons of different interactions going on, uncoordinated interactions. And we did a sort of rough back of the envelope estimation of like 7 million interactions a year for the field reps. We multiply the field force size, reach and frequency, times number of HCPs. It's a big number. And then as a CX person, I'm going, are those interactions branded line interactions, or are they highly variable? Imagine going to a Starbucks and there's like a different menu everywhere. Well, it's kind of happening a little bit, but you go into a Target or say Home Depot, and you get a totally different experience, different mix, different color scheme. Is that what's happening out there? So it's a question, because there's a lot of different interactions going on, different modalities. So complex interaction environment, high scale. And so within this TA, new leadership came in, and they came in for a reason. It was underperforming brands, very highly up and down brands. Weak post-launch execution. Launch was good, vertical execution wasn't that great afterwards. Inconsistent engagement, so even our omnichannel engagement numbers were up and down. So very inconsistent, highly variable environment. And the new leadership had a mandate to restore growth. Typical story, probably happening in your company today. The playbook was executed. So this new leadership came in, they executed a playbook that was pretty typical. Retrain the sales force, right? Swap out some sales managers, bring in new leadership into the mix. We've seen this story before, right? Add more tech stack. Someone comes in and says, hey, we have this new tech that can change your life and change everything. New analytics, new data science, whatever. New AI, it's gonna change the game. Tweak messaging and creative, near and dear to our hearts as marketers. Let's tweak the messaging, it'll change the performance. So these are rational choices, but ultimately didn't move the needle, didn't really work. Lots of activity, not a whole lot of change in the trajectory of the business. So the nerds were brought in, the CX nerds. And through the lens of the CX nerd, you see the world differently. You see the world through journeys. It isn't just the top line, looking at scripts written, right? The intent, the path to prescribe. It's all the way down the line. And here's what we saw. These numbers are fictionalized, but this is how you turn $1 billion into a $450 billion or a $1 billion blockbuster into a $450 million also-ran or disappointment. And here's how it looks. And we did this across multiple brands, different levels of intensity, different levels of degradation of revenue, but it showed up in every single brand in a therapeutic area, large therapeutic area. Basically, scripts written, think of it $1 billion scripts written. In this particular environment, it was like 20 to 30% went unfilled. So right away, you're losing $300 million in value. Does this sound crazy? I mean, you're a farmer, long time folks. Am I missing the point here? But this is real. So we spend a ton of money to get $1 billion in revenue, and we immediately lopped off 300 million of it. Again, varying degrees in different therapeutic areas. Some were higher than this, believe it or not. Next, of those that were filled, remaining that were filled, 20% were discontinued before 90 days. So early early exit from the therapy. So they're not getting the benefit. Again, from a commercial standpoint, you spend a ton of money, got them on therapy, did all that hard work, and now you're down to, another $140 million. Sounds crazy, but it is happening maybe in your environment as well. And then it goes down from there. Long-term adherence, we know that's a long-term problem. Lots of factors involved in that, not just journey issues that we control, or, there's a lot of sort of social issues surrounding long-term persistence and adherence. And then, but at the end of the day, we turn a $1 billion blockbuster into a $450 million disappointment. Does this sound familiar? You don't have to nod your heads. Are you calculating this? Who owns this? If marketing and sales is on the top line, getting the job done, in this environment, this case study, we were getting the job done. We were getting enough scripts to hit our numbers. But this value leakage below was killing us. And we didn't see it because we're not thinking about the journey. We're thinking about moments. Okay? So this is the real dynamic. All right, what do we do to fix this? I love this. Genchi Genbutsu. Anytime I get to speak Japanese, it's a good day. This is a principle. It's Genchi Genbutsu. It basically means go and see for yourself. It comes from the Toyota production line, a Toyota production system, Lean Six Sigma world. And it basically means the people closest to the work have the most insight into what's broken. It sounds, again, this is not rocket science. The people on the production line know where the defects are in the cars. That's why Toyota cars are so freaking good, because they've institutionalized this idea. And they value those people on the front line because they're seeing the journey up close. See where I'm going with this? All right. So what we implemented was a field operating system that institutionalized that within the pharma environment. Taking journey intelligence from the front line, thousands of reps out there every day, seeing things, hearing things, talking to the HCPs that we would love to talk to, and then no one was listening to them. It came back to corporate as complaints. But in the CX world, a complaint or bad news is gold. You value it. The more bad news, the better. Because bad news you can fix. I think someone mentioned that earlier today in a different context. So how do you get bad news back and good news back? What's working, what's not working at scale and across the enterprise? That's what the formula was. So that's your takeaway for today. You can go tomorrow, ask your field force, what is going on? What is inhibiting us from serving our patients? What's the friction points? We are docs. Tell us, you're there. But no one's talking to them, right? It's like in the retail environment, you're trying to understand your customers at Target, but you're not talking to your sales associates on the floor. They know, they're on the front line. So, not rocket science, but going from not listening to customers or to your front line to listening to them at an institutional level, to go from activity to impact, driving, having to be involved in driving progression post-script. So they're no longer just message delivery mechanisms. They are focused on barrier hunting. What are the barriers? And when you get this data back, and it was the most and richest amount of data we've ever had, and insights we've ever had about a therapeutic area at a major company. Like the field reps have a lot to say. And it's rich, it's nuanced, and then you can use the AI, again I have to mention AI, to detect the patterns in that data, that qualitative data. And it changed the entire environment because it created a mechanism, a system to identify barriers and reduce them. So, not rocket science, not sexy stuff, but we moved the needle on progression, post-script. And those few percentage points movement at each of those levels is money in the bank. It's already paid for. You've already invested in it. Now it's about realizing it. So the realization idea is real. You can move the needle, drive growth by pushing progression. All right, wrapping up. Here's just the building blocks of the system. And I say system, I mean people, process, platform, and principle. A system, big S system. Frontline listening, both structured data, unstructured data. Primary being the rep survey. Not a survey, more of a data collection mechanism built in to their daily cadence. So that every 6 months is an ongoing cadence of data coming in. Very sophisticated quarantine rules to make sure we're not over pulling data from people, but very, very valuable insight coming back. Experience intelligence, so measuring. We created a rep experience index. That rep experience index was a leading indicator for performance downstream. If we improve rep experience, take friction out of their life and day, that improved HCP experience, that improved call quality, that improved financial results. We saw that causal chain after about a year. Closed loop workflows, so again, not ad hoc calling John or Mary to fix the problem or access problem. It's done at the system level. So we're doing things institutionally to address these things that we see in the data. An operating mindset, like this is an operating flow. Simon's standing up, so I must be getting the hook. So AI powered, of course. I'll just kind of go to, you're not gonna heard of this company, but it's a company called Vadu, Journey Management. We basically built the back end on this, taking journey maps that were static and bringing them to life, using the data that was collected every day from our reps as a virtual LLM. So the AI is constantly learning, constantly probing, constantly understanding what's going on, putting it into context. And then our field enablement folks are now in the business of creating initiatives to resolve these barriers that are preventing us from doing clinical impact and commercial impact. With that, I will stop. I do have an asset coming out. I hope you guys will connect with me, and it'll come out in the next week or two, and you can, I'll send it to you for free, for sure. We'll not gonna charge anything for it, but you'll get it first. With that, I'll close down today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Wayne. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, everyone. Did anybody want to sort of chime in, pose any final questions before we, obviously we've got drinks reception next door coming out very shortly, but yes, Sabrina. No, you're good. I should know I'm always standing on the wrong side of the room.
Come on, Sabrina. Come on, Sabrina.
Yes, sir, trust me, I need it.
Do you mind if I sit next to you? Great presentation. Why do you think that, as a pharmaceutical person, we are so stubborn that we keep falling into that model that you showed in your case study and we don't get it?
That is the magic question. I put the question to you. I've sat on a couch with my therapist many, many times trying to understand, because here's the deal. Pharma, it's all about evidence, right? And you show the evidence, but yet the behavior still, it's a weird dynamic. I don't know.
Avinash.
Just be honest.
I don't know. I agree. It's a great philosophy. Listen to your field. Listen to the people talking to customers every day. Why don't we do that? Who knows? One reason could be not everybody in marketing has been in sales. They haven't walked in the shoes. You haven't carried the bag, but you get it from your prior experience. I've carried the bag. And so that means, it helps me understand why their opinion is so important. I live the mantra every day. When we talk to our field teams, we say, on our team, just our team, right? Tell us what we're doing well, we'll do more of it. Yeah. Tell us what we're screwing up, we'll stop doing it, or we'll fix it. And it just creates a perpetual virtuous cycle where you just get better and better and better over time. But most brands don't do it that way, unfortunately. So, great talk.
Indeed.
On your graph about the financial impact, you highlighted the big drop-off that adherence, early and long-term play.
Yeah, I'll try.
What have been some of the biggest tangible tactics that you found can help improve with long-term adherence?
You know, one of the things that we found there was that there were a lot of patient support programs that no one knew about. So they were constructed by the patient support teams over here, but no one knew about them here in terms of like interacting with HCPs. So that was the biggest thing. So it's a communication gap. It wasn't, the intent was there, but the execution wasn't there.
Rich.
I was gonna, when Sabrina raised her hand, I was gonna go like this, see how fast she could get over here. Thank you for everything, Wayne. I think a lot of the problem, and I'd love your perspective on it, is kind of Goddard's law. And Goddard's law, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And what do reps get paid for? Reps
point.
they don't get paid for downstream. They don't get paid for long-term adherence.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they might sell differently. Otherwise, marketers might message differently. They get paid for NBRX.
That's a good rationale.
And
Incentives.
my other big question for you, so it's a two-parter. How do you keep, reps are coin operated, and the second they feel that something is between them and a sale, which is them delivering a message, they'll step on it, they'll cut it out.
Yeah.
And so kind of
So,
two questions,
I
the
would say there's-
incentive and then the incentive to actually give feedback.
Yeah, so I would say the incentive piece of that's a great point of view of like, they're definitely incentivized to drive that top line, get the scripts written, and move on to the next. They're not paid to do the other stuff. But guess what they're doing? They're doing the other stuff on an ad hoc basis. They're getting calls. They're getting the follow-ups. They're getting like, hey, we want to put this patient on therapy. We can't get it done. So now the reps now involved trying to get a hold of the right people within the organization. So the work's being done, but it's done in a very ad hoc way. Second part of your question?
Yeah, the reps, because they're coin operated, they have kind of a short attention span for the other.
Well, that's a choice we're making as an industry. We're making coin-operated reps. It's a choice. So do they have to be coin-operated? Can they be more engaged in barrier removal? They are at Company X. They're getting there. The incentives are changing. That stuff on the bottom line goes directly to below the blue line. It goes directly to the bottom line. It's already paid for revenue.
All right. Well, I'm back where I started, so please don't ask any questions on that side. Any final questions or comments before we wrap up? No? All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Wayne.
much.
Thank
Stay
you.
here.
All right. So we're going to